What's up, guys? Welcome to our next lesson in social psychology. Now, first, I do want to warn you that, as I said in a previous video, in no other area of psychology is there such an abundance of research as there is in social psychology. So when I was preparing the material for this video, I struggled a bit because there's so much to gather, there's so much information to have. So I'm going to go into some of the main concepts to try to make this video short and up to the point. Alright? But there's a lot more than what I'm saying. I'm barely going to touch the tip of the iceberg. So the point of this video refers to the lesson on what is the self. Overall, in psychology, there's an agreement that the self overall divides in three areas, which is your self-knowledge. Self-knowledge refers to what you think about yourself. Then you have your interpersonal self. Interpersonal self is sort of like your reputation, but it's not specifically your reputation based on the group of people that don't really know you. This is based on the 3, 4, 5 people that really know you very well. The kind of idea that they have about you can actually give you a glimpse of who you are, and it may be very different to what you think that you are. So your interpersonal self, it was those 3 or 4 or 5 people that know you very well think about you. And the third area is your agent self. Your agent self refers to the kind of decisions that you take. So who you are is in the middle of those 3 areas. Very often we get this idea that who we are is only based off your self-knowledge, of our self-knowledge. So who should know me better than me? Nobody else knows me as I know me. So myself refers to what I think of me. But I'm just going to put up a little idea on the air. Throw an idea on the air. It's a little bit of a philosophical idea. If you think one thing about yourself, but your actions are showing otherwise, or the idea that those 3, 4, 5 people that know you very well have about you contrast with that idea, was to say that this is a real you. If, for example, I say overall I'm a good person, and believing that I'm a good person, though I do not act like a good person. I take a bunch of decisions that affect other people, and I take a lot of decisions that show me as a bad person. Who's right? Am I right because I think I'm a good person, or does my decision say that I'm not a good person? Your real self is somewhere in the middle. Now, let's shift specifically a little bit and focus a conversation on self-knowledge. Overall, self-knowledge is the idea that we have about ourselves. If you've never done it, by the way, it's a really interesting activity. Question, who am I? If you ever come across that question, it can be annoying to some people because we don't like to spend time thinking of who we are. But if you have the time, take off a couple minutes, put up the question on a notebook and think from your end, who am I? See what it can bring out. First of all, when it comes to the thought of what we think we are, our ideas very often tend to be influenced by our culture. If I were to ask you who you are, very likely, depending on your culture, is the kind of ideas that you will bring out forth to say who you are. If you grew up in a culture where your individuality is valued very much, when you say who are you, you're going to say things that define you as an individual. So you may end up saying something like, well, I'm a psychology student, I'm a person that loves to play basketball, I'm a person that loves to cook, and so on and so on. Things that define you individually. But if on the other hand, you grew up in a culture that values the group, what we call the collective culture, what you say about yourself is going to be more likely connected to the group. So you're going to say, well, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm a father of family, I'm a member of this group, whatever. Very often, what we think of ourselves can be defined by the culture that we grew up in, which is called also the causal theory. So, the thoughts that we have on ourselves can be tricky because often The ideas that we have on ourselves tend to be defined by standards. How we feel about ourselves may strongly be connected to the standards that we hold on ourselves. If on my standards, I define myself as the best professor in psychology across the whole town, I'm going to try to find ways to make myself believe that more. If I come across a professor that I feel like is better than me, I might try to find flaws to try to keep and maintain my attitude and thought as the best professor that exists. This is the kind of thing that makes our sense of self tricky. We cannot be truly objective when we say who we are. Now, this is quite an interesting point, super interesting point. No other field in psychology has the amount of what you would call classical studies as social psychology has. Why classical? Because they have a bunch of references that followed a bunch of studies that they opened up, and it gave out an overall new definition to the field. It opened up a lot of new research on the field. It can be sort of subjective, but classical studies are the ones that pretty much influence a lot of psychologists. No other field has the amount of classical studies that social psychology has. So let's talk first of all about the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory of emotion. That leads to one of the classical studies in social psychology, and it goes along with how we think of ourselves. See, the thing is, the way that we feel about ourselves, for example, when it comes to our emotions, can be tricked a little bit. Because according to this Schachter-Singer two-factor theory of emotion, our emotion is defined by two ways, which is arousal, like the sense of adrenaline that feels through our body. That's one factor. And the other factor is the thought that we place on it. So, for example, if I am driving and a car comes across my path and in a very risky situation, I stop suddenly, I may feel a rush of adrenaline through my body because I may have been very close to a car crash. That sense of adrenaline fills my body, and I may start to feel the heat. That is a moment of what I would then consider mentally shock. Maybe I would consider fear. Maybe I would consider this anger. Or if I'm kind of odd, I may say, man, this was a story to tell. Maybe like even a sense of excitement. The same sense of arousal fills your body, but the way that you think about it may make the emotion be subjectively very different. So what Schachter and Singer did, they got a group of participants in a study, and they began to give half of the participants epinephrine, which is a chemical that builds adrenaline through your body, and they were telling the group of students that participated in this study, half of them were aware that they were being given epinephrine, and they realized that this was going to fill their body with adrenaline. The other half were given epinephrine, but they were not told about this. So as they came in to do a task, they were sitting right next to a research assistant who was disguised as a participant. You call those people confederates in this field. A confederate came in, and a confederate was supposed to have only one task, and that was to be super annoying. So you got a group of people here that are working on their task, and they're aware that they received epinephrine, so they know that their body's going to fill with adrenaline. And you have another group of people here that were given epinephrine, but were not aware that their body was going to react this way. Both groups are feeling adrenaline through their bodies, and the confederates in both groups had one task, which was to be annoying. So imagine trying to finish here a task, and you get this annoying person here that keeps talking too loud, that keeps chewing with the mouth open like that, and it's annoying, that spills coffee next to you, and this person starts to get annoying, and you start to feel a sense of adrenaline building through your body. The people that were aware of the effects of epinephrine realized that the adrenaline they were feeling was because of the chemical, not because of the person. While the other group over here that were not told about the effects of epinephrine were feeling adrenaline, and they had this annoying person next to them, what do you think they did? They thought right away, this person is pissing me off and there's some reason why I'm feeling like this. What happened afterwards? Some of them tried to get to blows with it. It's a classical study because it showed us how, even for example, when we think we know our emotion, it can be tricked to make it seem like I'm feeling something when in reality, I'm not. Quick follow-up on this, and you can see this on a side video called The Science of Love. If a person is put in a situation where there's a lot of adrenaline and they see an attractive person coming next to them, that person that is not aware of the sense of adrenaline sees an attractive person and relocates the adrenaline to the person. What does that make me feel? Attraction. Huge attraction. Maybe you fall in love. If on the other hand, I don't have the sense of adrenaline and I see the same attractive person coming next to me, I may not feel the same connection as I would have if I would have experienced the adrenaline. Even if the adrenaline came from something totally unexpected. You know, think of a roller coaster next to a person that you sort of found somewhat attractive. The roller coaster goes by, you feel this adrenaline go into your body, and before you notice it, now you feel like you're in love with this person. That's why our sense of self-perception, our sense of self-knowledge is tricky. We don't always have the right ideas for why we feel the way that we do. Now, one last one that I want to bring on this is the sense of self-perception that we have. If we do not have a clue why we feel the way that we do, we observe our behavior and we think it's because of this. And I want to bring this up because it can be somewhat common, especially sometimes in Hispanic cultures. Say, if you start to work at a place where you haven't moved and you've been doing this job for 30 years, you ask that person, do you like your job? And the person says, well, I've been doing it for 30 years, so I guess I like it. That's the error of self-perception. When you don't really know yourself and you observe your behavior and think that because of your behavior, you feel a way. You see couples that have been together for decades and you ask them, do you love this person? And the person says, well, we've been together for 40 years, so I guess I love this person. You see the point here? That's not really showing your true self-knowledge. It can be tricky. You gotta watch out for that. Now, let's move on really quick to the next one, interpersonal self. This is the sort of reputation that you get based on the small group of people that know you very well. However, we gotta watch out because when other people try to tell us something about ourselves, we as humans don't like to have a negative perception. We don't like to have a negative sense of self from other people. So very often we can engage in what we call self-serving bias. Self-serving bias, in essence, very simple, is a way, like a defense mechanism that we engage in, where if something good happens, we tend to think that it's because of us, and if something bad happens, we tend to diffuse it and say that it was because of other people. So very simple, you take a test. If you nailed it and you get a perfect 100, you're going to say, oh, of course, because I'm smart. But if on the other hand, you take the test and you get like a 5 out of 100 points, like you sucked in the exam, it's not going to be your fault. You're going to blame it on the teacher. You're going to blame it on the test being super hard. You're going to blame it on anything but you, because that's a way in which we try to protect our sense of self. We got to be careful about self-serving bias because it can be quite prevalent, and it is a cognitive fallacy, which is going to be a different topic that we'll discuss later on. The last topic that I'm going to discuss is the agent self, which is referring to the decisions that we take. Sometimes we take decisions in a rushed, automatic mindsets. Sometimes we take decisions that we are not aware of why we're taking them. The point here, in sense of the agent self, there's a lot that we can explore, but I do want to focus just on quickly on two things. In the slides, I randomly showed a picture of a white bear, and I asked you, please do not think about a white bear. It's coming off a classic study that was following, that's not specifically in social psychology, but it's more a study in cognitive psychology, so I don't really consider this a classic study in social psych. But what they were doing here is they're placing an image, and they're being told, don't do this, don't think about a white bear. The participants in this study couldn't stop thinking about the white bear. This can lead to what is called thought suppression. If you're trying to forcibly not do something, not think something, your brain, your mind has a capacity, like a sense of stamina for how much it can work at that level. So if I'm saying I'm not gonna think about this, I'm not gonna think about the white bear, and you keep thinking about it, I'm not gonna think about it, I'm not gonna think about it, I'm not gonna think about it, eventually your mind gives in, and the thing that you didn't want to think about starts to come back over and over and over and over again. Like if you want to say, I don't want to think about my ex, before you notice it, it's the only thing that is on your mind. Typically, at the start of a new day, we have a lot of mental fortitude, which allows for a lot of capacity for thought suppression. But as the day goes by, that stamina and that energy starts to come down. Why would you think is the reason that in the morning you may be better able to eat healthy, same in the afternoon, but in the night, now you're eating everything that you can? Why is it easier for you to text and say things that you shouldn't say in the night than in the morning? In the night, our mental energy telling us not to do something is depleted, so you're more likely going to make bad decisions or say bad things, feel bad ways when your capacity for mental suppression is depleted. Something to consider. To wrap it up, self-handicap is something in social psychology that is somewhat of a mystery. Some people, like in the picture, just shoot themselves in the foot. Why would we take on decisions and why would we do things that affect us? Sometimes we do this consciously. And if it's consciously and it's constant and it's dangerous, then you're looking at abnormal psychology and you're looking at something that needs clinical professional help. But if it doesn't go to that end, something small, you're going out with your friends to have a drink and you know that you can stand 4 drinks. So you finish the 4th one and then somebody tells you, want to go for the 5th? You know that you shouldn't. But before you notice it, there comes the 5th, there comes the 6th, there comes the 7th, and the next day you're feeling like crap. Why would you do that to yourself? You know that you're supposed to sleep, say, at 11 p.m. because you're going to wake up at 6 in the morning. You're ready in bed by 10 p.m., gonna read a little bit, gonna watch a last TV show, and then I'm gonna sleep. And before you notice it, it's 2 in the morning and you're still watching TV. Why would you do that to yourself? That's self-handicap. In social psychology, there's a lot of different ideas, hypotheses, but not one concrete idea. But some of us do that over and over and over and over again. Something to consider, your agent self is taking decisions that may not be the best for you. If you can make synchrony across those 3, you tend to be much more consistent with who you are. In a way, it could be almost like more mentally congruent and more mentally safe, more mentally healthy. Consider that possibly the decisions that you're taking, the ideas that those people that know you can contrast with what you think. Maybe there's some truth in those. So that will conclude this lesson. Well done, guys.